Hey everybody, welcome back. It's business and it's time to cover the Tier 9 Premium Georgia, the battleship that is like an antagonized now, I guess. So, pretty good looking ship, but I mean, basically it's the same thing as the Iowa, minus the actual guns, the turrets there, and otherwise, you know what to expect visually and how it handles and everything else. That's still not to say I'm going to avoid going over the ship entirely in here in the port, but just to mention a few things, that's basically the main difference are the turrets themselves. It's still going to have some caveats here that are kind of present in the US line as it stands, but between this and the Massachusetts, I'm kind of curious to see if the now announced USS Ohio, which great timing on that wargaming, is going to be something that can continue the trend here with secondary focus. But so we have a pretty fast reload on these shells, only 26 seconds, which is kind of a big deal for this because again, you only have 6 shells to throw, so every time you miss, it matters so much more. But the turret traverse is all right. The dispersion, which I try to say this to people all the time, the port values for the dispersion don't really mean much of anything. RNG matters so much more than that, but the fire chance is really high. The maximum damage is ridiculous. It's almost 16,000. And the secondaries, of course, when you have the full-on secondary build like I do, save for the last upgrade slot, you reach out to 11.3 kilometers. I do run IFHE on this because I'm a try-hard noob, and that means they penetrate 28 millimeters of armor, which is pretty much no good against anything if it's a battleship. But yeah, the AA is pretty stout as well, really not bad at all. I've been very impressed with what the ship has been able to do against enemy planes, but never the first wave. It's always the second attack or the third attack. That's when things are really getting shot down. So, but I think that's pretty much the case with any ship, even the Minotaur, the Wister, or anything else. So yeah, the AA is solid as it is, and I really want to. I don't think it's a bad thing to suggest putting points into the AA if you're running into a lot of those. It's fast as hell, of course, 34.6 knots with the speed flag. That is a fantastic speed, of course. This is the trait of the Iowa, the Missouri, the Georgia, of course. Pretty big factor here in being able to use this in the flanking speed, and especially because it gets the speed boost as well, which we'll kind of show and go over later. But yeah, the rudder shift and whatnot, all of this is pretty standard for the class. Same with the concealment. I'm not really a fan of running too much on the concealment side of things for battleships, especially when it comes to one that is meant to be pushing, and this is definitely one of those. But I run auxiliary armaments mod 1 to try to keep as much of my AA and secondaries as possible. Rudder shift, of course, the dispersion module for the secondaries, dispersion module for the high tier USN, tier 9 and 10 only, and actually I take that back, and also for the Arkansas beta, you get that 11% reduction. You have to take that. There's no reason to take anything else, honestly, because you rely so much on the main battery to follow through with being able to get some sort of damage that your secondaries are not going to be able to do. I would not recommend ever taking the secondary reload module. It's only 20%. That's jack shit compared to what your main battery could be doing if you potentially rolled decently there, which again, I don't really take much stock in any dispersion values because it's just all strictly RNG. But target acquisition mod may actually be a relatively decent thing to take as well. So it just depends on, again, the situations you keep finding yourself in. But yeah, engine boost, it's pretty gnarly. It's not the full-on 20%. I believe it's I think it shows 15% there. I can't see, this preview window is super small, and there's no way for me to make that bigger. But I do run this particular build here with the extra fighter here for the support, because this thing gets focused like a son of a bitch by carriers. It always has whenever I've played against carriers, so this is how I roll it, because I initially had expert loader, but oh well. Adrenaline rush, BFT, AFT, IFHE, manual secondaries. Like I said, I've got this focused on secondaries. So, and actually, I'm not entirely sure what the hell I'm doing here. Looking at my other captains here, I think this is just an alternative build. I guess this is that's an interesting one. But yeah, turret traverse obviously goes down to a really nice level there with this particular captain with the expert marksman thrown on there, jack of all trades, basics of survivability. You've got high alert as well to try to keep this alive. But I really don't think the ship gives two shits about trying to live, and I say that because it really doesn't make much of a difference. The ship is so incredibly soft that it God. Basically, the high tier US and actually any US standard battleship, or obviously the fast battleships, they have real bad armor. So if you're throwing shells against, like, I love facing off against the Massachusetts, and it looks really good in the meritorious service here, the white camo. Against like something like a Massachusetts, Alabama, North Carolina, I love shooting those because they yield so much pen damage. Like the Minotaur, the Hindenburg, my god, just absolutely shred the hell out of those particular ships. And it's true for the lower tier cruisers as well. So it's not just specifically the tier 9, 10, or tier 10 cruisers that can wreck these guys. You know, if you're using AP and like the short fuse AP, like a Fiji, I've seen Fijis do a number on those particular battleships. But one of the problems here with the armor is that the way the turret is arranged here, and we'll actually apparently get to that in a second. I forgot how I actually did this. Of course, we have the 32mm bow. As is standard with all tier 8 battleships on up. You've got 38mm plating on the side and on the center of the deck there, but there's very little deck space on the amidships area from the front turret to the rear turret. It's mostly superstructure, so you're gonna take so much freaking HE damage from everybody and pen damage. But the turrets are a big problem with this because I get mine knocked out a lot, and you know, just as far as disabled, I think I've only had them destroyed a couple times. But if you take a look here at the angle for the frontal face, it does have a lot of armor on it. I think it's 540mm, which is going to be more than something like the Iowa, but the Iowa has a much better sloping on that as well. So it's back a few more degrees, which may equalize that. But on the Georgia, it seems like when the shells come in, if they hit the frontal face there, it almost always disables them, or obviously there's a bigger risk with having them destroyed. So just taking a look at the Citadel here, it is at the waterline, but trust me, that's not going to save your ass with this. It gets Citadel like crazy if you get caught out in the open, and a lot of people will try to be, you know, gunning it for an island with this, and they'll be in a straight line trying to keep their speed, and they get whacked for 20, 40, 45, 50k. I've seen some huge salvos against this, and it does have the same weakness as the Alaska with extremely weak lower barbette armor at only 76mm. Geez, let's put it this way, if say a Georgia is creeping out from behind an island, but decides to try to reverse, and you've got a shot on those the area underneath the turrets, and you're not going to be able to hit the Citadel, like, you know, further down because he's not really moving. And I say this all the time, when you're turning a ship, you're lifting that Citadel up and exposing it. So say the guy's reversing, but you still have a shot on his turrets, or like the front part of the ship, go for that lower barbette armor. I can promise you you're going to get results as far as disabling or destroying outright at least one turret, if not both. It's a huge issue on the Alaska. It's something that, like, I've taken, the very first damage I've taken in the match is losing one or both of my turrets because the shells come in on the side and land right into that barbette armor. They just nuke it. So it fucking sucks when it happens, but it happens. So anyways, I was really hoping to nuke that little eddy there, and by the way, this is a radar eddy, so not a very common occurrence, but he is using his heal, and the secondaries are burning right through that heal too. So this is one of those. I think I ended up doing like, I think it was like 15 or 16,000 damage with just the secondaries against him between my reloads, and that's while the main battery probably should have done more there. It's okay that it didn't. That's why I have the secondaries, you know, the points into the secondaries like I do. And naturally, French cruiser means, you know, pretty much an automatic bounce somehow, so that's cool. One of the biggest strengths that a battleship can have when it comes to having a speed boost is the reverse speed. And my god, this is amazingly powerful in that regard. And eventually I finally found the target. Yay! That took long enough, trust me. I shot at him a lot of times and just had no results until the end there. But basically, with the speed boost, it gives you a lot of flexibility when you're in a standoff situation. It gives you a lot of flexibility and the time to react. So if there's, you know, ships coming around, oh no, somebody's coming from a flank now, and that's your exposed side, and you don't have your turrets over there. Well, you were in full boost reverse, and now you can, you know, kick it forward and hopefully get the hell out of there before you get nuked. It's really interesting to see how much more dynamic the gameplay can become with something as simple as speed boost. And in this situation, as I was saying, how trying to get into cover here, you're going to take some huge damage because you just need to get behind an island, or you need to reposition yourself. That's the type of shit that's going to happen over and over. And this ship is hardly a battleship as far as I'm concerned. This is much more like what I might have expected with the Alaska than what we actually got, like what I feel like battle cruisers ultimately should have been. And which is funny because before this actually came out and before it was amped up with the secondaries, I was talking about exactly that. Like, it would be pretty interesting to have a cruiser that was focused on secondaries, just to see how different that would be. Obviously, just have reduced range, but have them be really high quality secondaries in terms of pen. Maybe not overall with the damage or you know, the reload or whatever the case is. But anyhow, again, this is a situation where I'm certainly way further out than I want to be using the rear turret against the Zao here, so hopefully something comes of that. But it's, yeah, it's a Zao. I'm not going to do much of anything to him, of course. But anyhow, going full reverse here now changes this situation, so I don't have to be exposed to the Montana and the Zao. I can just deal with the Curvers that's ahead of me with the secondaries while taking pot shots where I can against the Zao. And that's a huge ability of this ship, to be able to work flanks and work islands in a way that is more like a cruiser than a battleship. And check the shot out. Great look at dispersion. Yeah, so that's one of the problems with this. If you don't, when you have the chance to nuke somebody, if you don't do it, it hurts really bad. And then I managed to get the dev strike, of course, so whatever. I did actually 20k this KGV that's up here with my main battery. I forgot to show that, but I'm not going to bother with it now. It's too late in the editing process. But secondaries have been tearing his ass apart, and you know, this is kind of the thing, man. If you can get in a situation where you can use these secondaries at range, you're going to get results. And that's the thing about it, is the closer you get to any tier 8 battleship, or, you know, obviously any tier 8 or above battleship, you start to have the issue of the way the secondaries actually function, which is to say, secondaries don't aim ahead of a ship, they aim for the center mass, which is why against faster ships, secondaries almost always lag behind. And look at this dispersion. This is some of the stuff that you can never really expect to happen, but that is incredibly gorgeous. And a nice 20k salvo there. Lovely. And then Soyuz, you know, he's trying to get into position here. We have a stranglehold on this match, and take a shot over at him, yielding great results. That's awesome. again, you can't really expect that or count on that. It's just one of those things. But I really think that it's interesting because of how the secondaries work. Like I said, they aim for center mass. The faster a ship is, the harder it's going to be to get those secondary hits on them. And also, of course, the closer you are to them, the worse it's going to be against a heavily armored ship, such as a tier 8, 9, 10 battleship. So you want to be close, but not too close. You need the secondaries to come in and down onto the deck into the superstructure, because otherwise you won't do anything to them. You'll just have 400 hits, and they'll just be all along the main belt armor, and you won't get anything from them. And check this situation out. So Harugamo gearing here. See the potential for a double strike. Immediately click over. And this is actually live gameplay too that I recorded because I got tired of having to go into the place. And son of a bitch, I had my double strike ready to go. So that would have been my 200th double strike, and just last night I finally achieved that, and yeah, that was a big fun time for the people in the stream. Spent a lot of time trying to get that number 200, and it was 3 months since my last double strike, which is crazy to me. But anyhow, so yeah, just as far as the secondaries are concerned, the closer you are to cruisers, the better the secondaries will do, of course. The closer you are to destroyers, obviously the better the secondaries will do, unless it's a fast destroyer, and like I said, they'll lag behind. So there's a particular range there where you definitely want to be, and it's more associated with if you can get them to, if you can knock out their engine, or you can get them to turn or slow down at all, the secondaries are going to start tearing them apart pretty quickly. But I've had situations where secondary builds just, at point blank range, they can't keep up with a ship that's really fast, that's up close. It just depends on a lot of things. And finally we managed to get a decent hit on the Yamato. That does go to show the strength and the issues at the same time of the guns, where like this shot, exactly where I needed to place it, but I get pretty much nothing for other than the Citadel. It would have been obviously better to kill him immediately, because that reduces the chance of him being able to send another salvo like that one, potentially wrecking somebody's face, my face. It's just, geez, the main battery on this is disappointing. I had a game where we had, well, not disappointing, just it's a battleship, so it's inconsistent. There's no such thing other than the Slava as a sniping battleship. There's no such thing as a consistent battleship other than the Slava. That's it. There's no possible way any of those ships can be considered consistent, because that's not how dispersion, and certainly not how RNG works. So yeah, you're gonna get screwed by these guns the same way as any other battleship. It's just way worse on this, because you don't have the chance to have a couple extra shells that you would find on, say, in Iowa. You don't have a few extra shells to make up for the fact that you had like bad dispersion, because you can still roll bad dispersion and get nuking shots on people. It's just that, hey, it's battleships for you. So anyhow, yeah, I think overall though, like there's generally a range kind of radius that well, not radius, but there's like a threshold that I don't want to be dealing with enemy battleships or destroyers or cruisers at given ranges when I'm running secondary builds that only have, if they have less than 32 millimeters of pen. And I know a lot of people will argue against having that because it doesn't have at least 32 millimeters of penetration, but again, this, you have to kind of consider the look at the way that people flock to the secondary builds on the Germans. It's because they have issues with the main battery. It's the same thing with this. Yes, these shells hit hard as hell when they hit, and especially if you can get the broadside of somebody. I mean, knocking nearly 16,000 damage off with a single Citadel hit is pretty significant, and that can pay huge dividends over the course of a match. If you're getting 2, 4, 5, 10 Citadels, that's a very significant thing. And you know, the higher general pen damage as well is also something that can't be overlooked, because you know, you may only get say three shell pens that actually do damage against somebody, but that's 15,000 damage. Actually, it's 15,300 something damage, or 400 damage, with just 3 shell pens. That's insane. So that's if you look at, you know, some of the other ones that have 12-8 or something like that, it doesn't seem like much of a difference, but when you're trying to knock somebody out, every point of damage matters a lot. And by the way, that damage that I just took there, that 3570, was the only AP damage that you'll see that actually affects me here. These are shells coming in from the Alaska, and then I get hit by a Jean Bart, and that is in the opening engagement against an enemy team as I try to position myself, and that was all HE, other than 3,570 damage of it. So that is in particular why I feel like this ship is hardly a battleship and far more a cruiser, or what I may have expected the battle cruisers to actually end up feeling more like. You know, maybe they take a lot more pen damage, but they hit hard as fuck too. And that's not to say that the actual battle cruisers that we have right now, and I was hoping to knock out his rear turrets, give me more options here to maneuver. That's not to say they don't hit hard. Of course they can, and they do. It's just this feels much more like a heavy cruiser than it does a battleship, and that's also again reinforced by the speed that it has, the you know, the general utility that comes with being able to push a flank as fast as this can. I've won matches in 6.5, 7 minutes because, you know, myself and a couple other people decided to push a flank, and again going for the turrets here, but unfortunately no results. I was really hoping for that, because here we go with a very dangerous situation. I've got a Georgia behind me here, and I'm trying to actually not maneuver here. So we're going to see me turn in just a little bit, and I was like, oh shit, that was bad timing. I got super lucky with that. Those were I think those were only his front turrets there, but this other Georgia is doing the drive-by with me, aim right behind the conning tower for the sits. There you go. So that was fun. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, if you enjoy the Massachusetts, you should enjoy this, really. Do I think it's worth the coal? Absolutely. Do I think it's worth $80? Fuck no. I don't think anything is worth $80 in this game. I don't think anything's over $50 in my opinion. But that's not my money to spend, it's yours. But if you have the option to not spend the real world cash that you make, go with the options that present themselves otherwise, as far as coal, steel, free XP. Do that first, because it's a minimal investment other than time. You don't have to shell out the cash for it, and to me that's a big thing. So yeah, it is a fun ship at times, and it's a frustrating ship at times. Just it's a battleship. That's all you can ever really say about them. That's not to say I don't like it. I enjoy it, but it just really depends on the situation. It's very sensitive to those situations. But I hope you enjoyed today's overview, guys. I will see you back here next time, and take care.